Welcome to Talking Grit, a Detroit Lions podcast. Talking Grit is brought to you by the Monroe County Reporters, Monroe's top news source for police, fire, and community events.
Post 3 and Depot Street. Truck boy at request.
Follow them on Facebook, and for $2.99 a month, you can become a subscriber and get the news you crave even faster.
Welcome back, everybody, to Talking Grit. I'm Jason Harwood, and with me is Jacob Litton. Before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you to all our listeners out there. It's been fun. We're in the off season. We're not even to the season yet, so it's been a fun and exciting ride. I just wanted to let you know that if you ever want to reach out to us, there is a link in the episode description. It says send us a text message. If you click on that, then you could send us a message. So you could send us a question. You could send us just a comment about the episode or whatever you want to do. However, we don't get the name that it's from. So if you want us to acknowledge you, if you want us to give you a shout out or whatever, just put your name in the message so that we can do that. The other day, Jacob and I were working together and we happened to get one. So that was cool. We're looking at our phones at work, so we're being bad people. Jacob, what did that message say?
Yeah, so our first fan mail comment, once again, we don't know who it's from, but we still appreciate it. They say, love the show, guys. Keep it up. The police siren in the intro freaks me out every time. Other than that, no complaints. Can we look into lowering the volume of the police siren, or we just need people to listen more often and be ready for it?
Well, I think this particular person's probably feeling pretty guilty. Maybe they were speeding while they were driving and listening to us. So slow down and maybe we'll be all right. But yeah, I can look into the police siren. Actually, my wife goes, yeah, it kind of gets me too every time. But I just think these people are, have guilty consciences. They're doing something. They're worried if the cops are after them.
When I'm listening to music and I'm driving in the car, if I hear that siren too, you hurry up, you look in your rear view like, oh man, They got me.
Yeah. We appreciate it. There's other things. If you look in our episode summary, there's other ways to reach out to us. Our email's in there. All our social stuff is in there. Well, you can hit us up on any of those things. So just wanted to, again, say appreciate it to everyone that's listening. It's still kind of surreal that people keep tuning in. Jacob and I are having a lot of fun. So are you tired of me yet, Jacob, or are you still having a good time with this?
I've been tired of you, but that's okay.
That's all right.
We're talking football. I love talking football. Love talking Lions.
Yeah, even if it's with me, so.
That's all right. You can be the punching bag.
Yeah, that's for sure. Jacob and I want to issue a congratulations to Calvin Johnson. We're recording this Monday night, so earlier today it was announced he's going to be inducted into the Pride of the Lions, which is pretty sweet. When's the celebration going to happen, Jacob?
That's going to be on halftime of the Monday Night Football game against the Seahawks. So it's early on in the season, week 4. Well-deserved. Shouts out to Megatron. Long overdue. He had kind of that falling out with the Lions and everything. He was away from the team for a while, so really good to have that guy back in the building, back on our side. Just really can't say enough great things about him. Definitely deserves it.
Yep, we're going to celebrate at halftime and the Seahawks game, then we're going to celebrate after the game that we won that game. That's my plan, at least. So today we're going to talk, obviously, Lions. ESPN dropped some top 10 lists. These lists are made from a survey from players, coaches, and just league personnel. Not every position has been released. The ones that we are still waiting on: wide receiver and off-ball linebackers and cornerbacks. So we won't be able to talk about those because as of right now, they haven't been released. The latest one that was released today was quarterback. So Jacob, why don't you go ahead and start us off here?
Real quick, we can't talk about it, but I know a Lions wide receiver that better be pretty high on this list when it drops on Wednesday.
Yeah, they better be. I can't imagine he's not going to be on that list.
They released a position every day. Just kind of going to talk about who's at the top of the list. We had a Lions representative for a lot of these positions, so that's really cool to see. First list that dropped was going to be interior offensive linemen. So they classified the guards and centers all together. Top of the list, you have Zach Martin, number 1, Chris Lindstrom, number 2, and Quentin Nelson, number 3. Our very own Frank Ragnow came in at 8 on the list. So it was good for Frank to get some recognition. He's got the all-pro thing. He seems to get some accolades on the field, but for whatever reason, the media and everything, it just doesn't seem to get much love. So these lists were made by ESPN executives, coaches, scouts. So, people that know what they're talking about, you would think. So really cool that Frank was on the list. Do you agree with him being 8?
No. Well, he wasn't even the number 1 center on the list. The Kansas City Chiefs center was number 1, which, or not number 1. He was
7
ahead of Frank.
Ahead of,
yeah, and so I was like, I don't know about that. But it's great to see Frank on the list. Well deserved to be on there. And just imagine what Frank could do if he was like 100%, didn't have the toe issue or anything like that. But been one heck of a Lion, one heck of a football player. And yeah, just glad to see him finally get some recognition. It's nice to see all our Lions get recognition. Having the exposure in the NFC Championship game, just getting that far probably gives you a tiebreaker over some other players that didn't get that far. So I'm super happy about Frank making it there.
Right, definitely. Another one, well deserved.
All right, what position we're going with next?
So the next position they dropped was safeties. We've got a couple of safeties on our team. They're all pretty young. We did not make the top 10 on this one, but we did have honorable mention. They listed for each one a couple honorable mention, people that got a lot of votes too, but not quite enough to crack it. So our honorable mention for that one is Brian Branch. So that's really good.
If he's an honorable mention too.
If he got a vote, but I don't think he was honorable mention.
Oh, okay. I thought he was listed on the bottom.
I could look again. I believe that he received votes, but he wasn't enough to be considered honorable mention.
Oh, yeah. It's other receiving votes. I see what you mean. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. But I mean, that's a good point because then, if his name's at least out there, somebody's putting him out there. He's getting votes. The top of the list, number 1, Antoine Winfield Jr. We know him for getting stiff-armed in the face by Ja.
Yeah.
Kyle Hamilton, number 2. Jesse Bates, number 3. I think what we had going against us, we just have a lot of young guys proving themselves still cool that their name is on the list. They're up there. They're mentioned with them. Not quite enough to crack the top 10 yet. I think that's fair, though.
Yep. I fully expect Branch's name to be in the top 10 next year. I fully expect that. What's next on the list, Jacob?
Okay. Next one we have is edge rushers. This one was one that we were both anticipating because we knew Hutch was going to be on here. But how high do they put him? Who's in front of him, who's behind him. So edge rushers, they have number 1, Myles Garrett, number 2, TJ Watt, number 3, Micah Parsons. Just to go through the rest of these guys, because these are some notable names here. You follow that with Nick Bosa, Max Crosby, then you've got Aiden Hutchinson at 6. Danielle Hunter, 7, Josh Hines-Allen, Trey Hendrickson, Brian Burns. These are all some monsters. These are all great edge rushers. So the fact that Hutch is on there, number 6, really cool. We talked about this briefly before. You would think Hutchinson top 5, like he's really good. He could be top 5. You see the 5 guys in front of him, and now I can kind of see where the toss-up would be because you could make a case for any one of those guys to be, top 2, top 3.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with where Aiden's at on that list. Now, if he gets up and gets 15, 16 sacks next year, having DJ Reader on that line is going to make him look better. Just a sack total alone will make him more noticeable, but no, I can't argue. Now, him and Max, I mean, that's pretty close. Super high motor players, just high effort players, and just don't ever give up. So I like him being next to Max on that list for sure.
Yeah, and Hutch is younger too, so I mean he's not even to his prime yet, I guess you would say.
Yep. Yeah, I fully expect him to take another step this year. He seems to do that every year. He finds something to work on, and he just keeps getting better. But it doesn't hurt that you have to work against Penei Sewell in practice every day.
For sure. That's one way to get better. They're helping each other out.
Exactly.
All right. Next position they dropped is defensive tackles. No Lions made this list. I can't say I was necessarily surprised. Number 1, Chris Jones. 2, Quinnen Williams. 3, Dexter Lawrence. We're hoping Aleem has a good season. We've got DJ Reader. We got, solid tackles, but I can't say I expected them to be top 10 on this list.
But I was still thinking like DJ Reader would get honorable mention. Maybe it's probably the injury that kept him off that, I would imagine, but right. I think he deserves at least the honorable mention.
Next one, we made this list. This is the tight ends. We knew that we had a tight end that was going to be on this list. It was just a question of where he was going to be, how high. Tight end list, number 1, they have Travis Kelce, 2, George Kittle, 3, Mark Andrews. Those are kind of the big 3 tight ends. No surprise that was going to be, the order that they were in. Number 4 on that list is our own Sam Laporta, which was very cool that he was up that high, just in front of TJ Hawkinson, who was number 5.
Yep, it's interesting. He's right in front of TJ. I'm not shocked that he's number 4. I do think he played better than number 4 last year, but the other 3 have been doing it for much longer and at a very high level. So I don't knock that at all coming in season number 4, but if he has another season like he had last year, he better be higher than number 4 next year.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was one of those things where, he did enough where he could have warranted getting that 3 spot for sure. But, because he was a rookie and everything like that, it was like, how much love are they going to give him? Are they going to put him 8 or 9 in front of some of the people that didn't deserve it? So I'm cool with 4. I definitely think he belongs there.
I mean, there's Hall of Fame players ahead of him, so you can't knock that. But if I'm starting a new team, he's probably the first tight end that I'm taking right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. All right. What's the next position we got, Jacob?
All right. Next one, we had running backs. We're represented on this list as well. This one was a really interesting list for me to read and go over. I'm just going to read the whole list just so that you can see, so we can tell everybody. So number 1 is Christian McCaffrey. No arguments there. I think that one, was pretty easy. Number 2, they put Breece Hall.
Yeah.
Then Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, Josh Jacobs from the Packers, and then we are in at number 8 with Jahmyr Gibbs, followed by Derrick Henry at 9, then Travis Etienne at 10. Really, really kind of a weird running back list to me.
When you read these ESPN lists, it'll tell you what the highest rank that, someone gave them and what the lowest rank. And if you look at all these rankings, there's wide variation. Like Bijan Robinson, highest ranking was number 1. Someone ranked him as the number 1 back. And then the lowest ranking was unranked. So then you had like Josh Jacobs, the highest ranking is 2, lowest rank unranked. For Jahmyr, highest ranking is 3, lowest is unranked. It seems like there was a wide variety of where people viewed these running backs, and so therefore it complicated the list. Some people had Nick Chubb as the number 1 running back, but I think coming off the injury, that's going to be tough. I mean, hopefully he can come back. There's a video I saw today of him squatting, I don't know how much, like 700 pounds. So I think he'll be back and no problem. But, it just speaks to the wide variety of opinions on these running backs.
Definitely. Yeah, agreed about Nick Chubb. I've been following him on Twitter and everything like that. He's somebody that you root for outside of the Lions. For him to be ranked number 3, like you said, coming off the injury and everything, I feel like that's too high. Was it Bijan that you said somebody ranked him number 1?
Yeah, it's
I don't know how you do that. Josh Jacobs, I think the highest, number 2. Like, What are you talking about? Well, he had a very down year last year. So I don't know if they're just putting him that high in anticipation of what he's about to do versus what you have done. I think that's where a lot of people put Bijan above Jahmyr Gibbs, is just because of the hype, the flashes that he's shown. I don't know, just the publicity, I guess, ahead of time. They really put Bijan over Ja. When if you look at actually what happened last year, I think you would put Jahmyr above Bijan.
They're obviously 2 different backs, but Bijan has been impressive. I had no doubt about that. He doesn't warrant number 2 or number 1. I mean, I don't know in what world you rate Bijan Robinson ahead of Christian McCaffrey. He's no doubt number 1 in any metric, I would imagine. I don't know how someone put him number 1. Maybe it was an Atlanta Falcons writer. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Well, here, take those 10 that are on the list. Just not even considering anybody else. Out of those 10, who would you put 1, 2, 3?
So I would put CMC number 1. If I were in a non-injury year, Nick Chubb is number 2 all day, I would think. Number 3, man, that's a tough one for me.
It's hard when you're looking at everybody.
I mean, injuries obviously play a huge part in this. I think Breece Hall is pretty amazing, and if he has Aaron Rodgers back, that's going to take a lot of pressure off him, because he had a really nice season last year, and Zach Wilson's back there. That's a rough thing. So I can understand why Breece Hall's getting ranked up there. But, I don't know. Saquon interests me just because of the offensive line that he's going to be playing behind and just all the other offensive threats that Philadelphia has. Saquon is a very elusive runner, but he's also been the main focus on that team pretty much ever since he, came to the Giants and into the league. He hasn't really had any other offensive threats. Teams go in there to stop Saquon, and everything else is secondary. It may not be that way with Philadelphia. You have A.J. Brown on the outside. It'll be interesting. I definitely could see Saquon having a strong year. So I guess talking that through, I'd probably put him at number 3 after Nick Chubb. But what are your 1, 2, and 3?
I was thinking McCaffrey number 1 for sure. I would have put Saquon at number 2 just because of, what we've seen him already do with the Giants. He's going to be dangerous back there. Jalen Hurts, the line the Eagles have, like you already said, the weapons they have on the outside. He was the main focus for a defensive game plan when you were playing the Giants. They're not worried about Daniel Jones. You're just worried about containing Saquon. Stuff the box and do whatever you have to do. You can't really do that. In Philadelphia, he has potential to go off. I would put him number 2. I guess if you're taking the injury out of the equation, then Nick Chubb being 3 is solid. I don't think that he's going to be able to play at the level that he was before. But you know what? He had the injuries in the past, and he came back from it and played just as well. So you hope that he's able to come back. I'm not sure that he would.
Yeah. I think a player that's going to move into that top 10 this year is Joe Mixon. He got a pretty good offensive line in Houston.
Interesting.
Got in the top 10. I'm not saying he needs to be up towards the top, but I think the people outside the top 10, I think he's definitely got a shot to be moving in there. He hasn't had a strong offensive line. He's had other offensive threats definitely in Cincinnati, but Houston's got a good offense, so I could see him having a pretty good year.
Okay, I see it. All right, let's move on here.
Well, David Montgomery did receive some votes, so he was in like the other, so he did get some recognition. So that was good. He didn't get in the top 10 or honorable mentions, but at least received some votes. And he deserved that.
He had a really good year, especially splitting carries with Ja.
Yep. All right.
Next, we have offensive tackles. This is probably the only one that I looked at and thought we got robbed. So, offensive tackle list, number 1, they have Trent Williams. Number 2 is Penei Sewell. Number 3, Laramie Tunsil. I feel like Penei should have overtook Trent this year and been number 1.
Yeah, I agree with that. No doubt. If you go off PFF grades, no one's even close to what Penei is doing. So,
I get, Trent Williams has been the top tackle for 4 or 5 years in a row, and he's been top 5 for even longer than that. So, definitely still effective. The fact he's doing what he's doing at his age is great. I just feel like Sewell is better than him now. I feel like he overtook him last year. Moving down the list, though, we also have our other tackle, Taylor Decker, popped in here as an honorable mention. So he received enough votes that he got put in as honorable mention. So that was cool. Showing the strengths of our offensive line.
Oh, I know. It's great. I love it. I love Taylor getting some recognition. He is a very solid left tackle, so I'm happy with that. Going back to Penei, the highest ranking that anyone gave him was number 2. No one ranked him number 1 in their list. If you see that, the lowest was 5, which how do you put him?
Right. Who did that?
Yeah, exactly.
That was some Packers writer.
Yeah, I was going to say Packers or Bears fan, so I don't know. But Penei was rated 6 last year on the same list. This year he's, up to 2. But I cannot believe that no one put him as number 1. Everyone had to vote for Trent Williams or someone else on that list. I don't get it, man. But
who would you put above him then? If you're not going to put Trent Williams, what do you have those numbers? What was the lowest Trent Williams?
Well, I could tell you that Tristan Wirfs, who's number 4, they said highest ranking 1. So someone put him number 1. So let me see if anyone else got. Oh, Andrew Thomas for the Giants. Someone ranked him as number 1. He's number 8 on this list.
Ridiculous.
The highest rank is 1. Lowest ranking is unranked. So someone decided to put Andrew Thomas above Penei Sewell. No.
We're discrediting these lists as we get further on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're just talking points. These are people's opinion. Like you said, who would you put in a 1, 2, and 3 on a list? Everyone's list is going to be different. Obviously, we're shaded more towards the Lions, and we're going to want to give our guys the respect that they deserve.
Absolutely. But if you say that Penei Sewell is a number, would you say it was number 5 or number 6?
Number 5 was the worst that he was rated.
There's not 4 tackles better than him in the league.
No, of course not. Unless you're not watching football, you're thinking, oh, that's a Lions player, and you didn't watch last season. It's all, just like PFF's list. I mean, there's some objective data that they think is objective. There's a lot of subjectivity to this, and depends on what games you watched and whatever. But I don't know on what planet Penei Sewell isn't 1 or 2, and they have someone decided he was number 5. So weird. We should find that guy. Let's make it a mission to find who put him number 5 so we could publicly shame him on Twitter.
Okay, that sounds good. And find out who put Andrew Thomas number 1.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. So the most current one, the one that dropped today, was the quarterbacks. Always interesting when you talk about the quarterback list. Going through it, we have number 1, Patrick Mahomes. No surprise there. Number 2, Joe Burrow. Number 3, Josh Allen. Going down, our Jared Goff comes in at number 9. So he did make the top 10. They have him ranked number 9. Do you think that's fair? Where do you think he's at?
I'm happy that he's on this list because, you read a lot of these articles and they always start out glowing for Jared Goff, like, oh, he's second in league in passing, leading a top 5 offense, all this. And then they always have some caveat at the end where, doesn't handle pressure well or something to that effect, just to discredit Jared Goff. It seems like that's what he's had to deal with his whole career, but yet he's putting up unreal numbers, and he's led a top offense, not just on one team, but on 2 teams. He's led a team to the Super Bowl. He deserves more credit than he's getting. And what is kind of a slap in the face on this list, if, you go put Jared Goff 9, you got Aaron Rodgers at number 8. Obviously I have my thing with Aaron Rodgers, but I don't know how you put him at number 8. His last year in Green Bay was not that great. And then he was out all last year with an injury. He's 40 years old and he's coming off an Achilles injury. How do you think that he's going to have that good of a year? I don't get it.
Yeah, if you were betting on that, I don't think that you bet that he's going to have that good of a year. That's just because of his name, because of who he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers 8. They put CJ Stroud number 7.
Yeah. We could talk about number 5 too. That's, our buddy Matt Stafford. When he was at the Lions, he gets zero respect. All the stuff, he's like, oh, he's got all these stats because he comes from behind. But when you read about these things, people are just like go gaga over him. And I'm happy for him. I have nothing but love for Matt Stafford. I really liked Matt Stafford when he was here, and I think he's just a good person in general. He just seems like it just irks me that suddenly when he's not on the Lions, that he's suddenly seen as this, elite talent. It's unbelievable. And the highest rank that someone ranked Matt Stafford was 3. The lowest was 10 for Matt. And if you're going back to Aaron Rodgers, the highest that someone ranked him was 3. Someone thought that Aaron Rodgers is the number 3 quarterback in this league. I don't get it. The highest that Jared Goff got rated was 5. So that's a good sign of respect, but the lowest was out of the top 10. Obviously, the Lions think that he's a top player. They gave him a huge contract. I'm glad that he's my quarterback. And they actually have Goff rated ahead of Dak. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I thought that was cool. I was expecting Tua to be on this list somewhere too. Mm-hmm. Dak, Tua, but you start looking at all these quarterbacks. A lot of them I think are on a level playing field. Obviously, Mahomes is number 1. But in my opinion, after Mahomes is where the drop-off is, and that's where you can kind of, and they're all different styles of quarterback too.
Mm-hmm.
Lamar Jackson's a completely different quarterback than Matthew Stafford. They're both completely different quarterbacks than Jared Goff. It's just interesting. They're all different kind of players playing the same position, and therefore it's really hard to try to put them in order and grade them appropriately.
I think it's also with a quarterback, you're going to judge them on wins and losses more than any other position. You're not going to judge Jahmyr Gibbs on win losses. You're going to judge Jared Goff on a win and loss. So, you're always going to have that. Some players get judged more, postseason performance. I think Lamar Jackson drops down on this list because of postseason performance, as opposed because he was the league MVP, and he's number 4 on this list. So that tells you something, that people look at things differently. The weird one for me on this list is Justin Herbert at number 6.
Yeah.
I like Justin Herbert a lot. He's had some pretty good talent around him, and he's, whether it's just the Chargers, just team in general, and just the dysfunction on that, it'll be interesting to see what Harbaugh can get out of there. Obviously, a good coach. Be interesting to see what happens now. But they've kind of gutted that team, really. And so we'll see. Get rid of his number 1 target, Keenan Allen. It's going to be tough for him. But I would rather have Goff right now than Justin Herbert, just because of on my team. But I don't know, if you put Justin Herbert in here, what kind of numbers he could put up. I'm sure he could put up ridiculous numbers just for having that offensive line, nice running game, awesome wide receiver. It's interesting. I just, the love that Justin Herbert gets, but he really hasn't accomplished much in this league.
No, the stats really aren't there. The wins aren't there. It's kind of just the hype still keeping him rolling. He's, great arm talent. Definitely can throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
It just hasn't translated much so far.
Yeah, it kind of reminds you of just a Matt Stafford. He's not putting up the stats that Stafford was putting up, but he's just got a really good arm, really personable, seems like a good guy. You usually judge these quarterbacks on wins and losses, and he hasn't won much, but yeah, he's still ranked high up there. So it's kind of interesting that he's on there. CJ Stroud up there, someone ranked him as high as number 2, which I found very interesting. I think that's a little high, not a little high, a lot high, actually.
That's the hype.
Yeah, it is.
He finished the year off really well last year, but I mean, you still don't know exactly how well he's going to be.
Right. There's always seems to be, you have a really good year, and then teams are ready for you the following year, and they've studied tape on you for a year and might be able to figure some things out to confuse you on defense. I like their coach. I don't expect too much of a fall off for him, but it's happened. Anything else you want to add on the quarterbacks?
No, I was just going to point out the Josh Allen thing, because that's another one that he's consistently rated towards the highest list of the quarterbacks. The wins are there as far as the playoff performance goes. The fact his turnover rate is so high, how long are we just going to rank him as a perennial number 3 until his career is over, even though he's got nothing to show for it?
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think he's got unreal talent. I think just, his ability to run and basically truck over people is pretty impressive. He was rated, someone rated number 1. Someone rated him above Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen has won. I mean, that's where, you talk about Herbert hasn't had much success in the playoffs. Josh Allen's just run into Patrick Mahomes, and he had him beat, got down to that 12 seconds, and then, Patrick Mahomes did what he did. But last year showed me the limitations on Josh Allen. He can be a very frustrating player, just makes frustrating mistakes sometimes. And we've dealt with that with Stafford here, just doing amazing talent. You're trying to carry the team, and that's what it felt like Josh Allen was trying to do, and just do too much, and you start making mistakes.
Absolutely. It feels like the window for them is closing, though. He's still a young quarterback, but, they lost Diggs and everything. It's going to be an interesting year.
Yeah, and they've lost a lot on that defense, too. So, he's going to have even more pressure to perform next year, just because I expect them to have to do more shootouts. So,
right.
That kind of wraps up the ESPN list. Speaking of rankings, next week, it starts on Monday, July 22nd. The NFL starts doing their list from the top 100 players. Out of all the lists that we've talked about, the PFF list, the ESPN list, this is the one that I probably respect the most. This comes from just other players in the league, and it's usually pretty representative of where a player belongs for the most part that I've noticed. So that starts next Monday. It's going to be released on NFL Plus every weekday, all the way leading up till Friday, August 2nd. They're going to do the top 10 list. So I highly recommend. It's very entertaining. Go through and just have players talk about other players, and I really enjoy it. So what do you think about that, Jacob?
Oh, we look forward to it every year. Like you said, it's players vote. It's largely based on how the year went last year, without as much, because that's the thing about that ESPN list too. Aaron Rodgers is a good example. He didn't even play last year. They're putting him on the list based on what he's done and where they think he may do next year. this list generally goes off of how you played last year versus where you're at now. Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't expect Aaron Rodgers to be on the list. Not to mean that he won't be. He won't sneak in somehow. But, I mean, usually that's just how they do things.
Yep, I agree. Quickly, we're going to review over the top 100 last year. The Lions had 3 on the list. Jared Goff came in at 66. So that was our highest ranked player coming in last year was Jared Goff at 66. 67 is his partner, Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then 88 on the list was Aiden Hutchinson. So Hutch made the list last year at 88. I expect him to be higher this year. So a fun exercise that Jacob and I thought we were going to guess how many Lions are going to be in the top 100 next year. And then we also have a placement, a rough range of where they're going to end up. So I have 6 Lions on my list, Jacob, that I think are going to be in the top 100. How many do you have?
So I actually have 5 on here that I've listed as locks, and then 2 that I think should be on there, but I'm not sure that they'll put on there.
All right.
I have a total of 7, I guess. Okay. I'm going to go first, but to lead into what happened with the last year's list, the episodes they drop, the first one's going to be whoever's ranked 100 to 90.
They're doing 20 at the first episode, then it's 10 for all the other following ones. You want me to go first, or you want to go first?
Well, I have my honorable mention section.
Yeah, why don't you do your honorable mention, then I'll shoot it over to me.
The first one I'm going to say on here is that Frank Ragnow should be on that list because of his position, like you said with the exposure and everything like that. Because of his position, I don't think he's going to make it. They don't typically put centers on there, I don't believe. I feel like he's done enough and that he should be a top 100 player. I don't think that he's going to make the list.
You don't make that list unless, as a center, unless you're like Jason Kelce and you have the personality to go along with it. Frank's got a great personality, but not as outgoing as Jason Kelce.
Right, no. Frank's out fishing somewhere and he's not on the pod.
He doesn't care about lists like this. He's just
not
worried about how many walleye he's catching.
Okay, so next one I have that I didn't call a lock, but I think should be a lock. I'm just worried he's going to get snubbed, and that's going to be Sam Laporta. I'm hoping that we see him in the first episode, that 95 to 100 range. Based on how he played last year, you could put him pretty high on that list, but rookie tight end, the people that we already talked about for the other list that are going to be ranked above him, I don't know that he's going to make it. I'm not enough to call him a lock, but I hope that I see him on there towards the end. Was he one of your guys or no?
He is. I got him higher. I think he's a lock to make it. He was all pro. I think he's going to make it. I have him up at 75 though. He's a top player. He's top 100 in the league for sure.
Right.
My lowest ranked player that I had on the list, however, is Ja. So I got Gibbs coming in at 93 on my list. He's a weapon. He's a game changer, and exactly what Brad Holmes thought he was going to be coming out. That's exactly what he's turned into for us. Do you have him on your list?
Yes,
Jameer?
He's one of my locks. I think Gibbs is going to be in the 80 to 90 range.
Okay. Yeah, so we're in the same ballpark on that.
Yeah.
All right, who's the next one on your list?
So the next one I have Jared Goff. I think that he's going to be on here. I think he's still going to be pretty close to where he was last year. I think he's going to be around 60 to 70.
Yep, that's where I got Goff. I got Goff at 70. He was at 66 last year. He probably deserves to be higher than 66. But like we talked about earlier, Jared Goff doesn't get near the amount of respect that he deserves. However, I'm going to say for my own personal belief, when Jared Goff came here, I went with the national media on that. Just, what I saw was a lot of lowlights, especially his last year at the Rams. So I did not have high hopes and thinking he was going to be the guy to, win playoff games for us. But if you watch the games and you just see how he does in clutch situations and how cool he is, and his ability to move around in the pocket has definitely gotten better in his time here. I've noticed that he's been able to avoid sacks, and he chucks it on fourth down. That's the highest pressure he's going to have as a quarterback. He deserves to be higher. I'm glad he's my quarterback, but I think he's going to be pulled around 65 to 70. I have 70 on my list, but anywhere in that same range he was last year. And that's fair, but again, I'm happy he's my quarterback. So
well said. Shouts out to Jason. Good take.
So All right. What's next on your list? Who's the next guy?
Okay, next one I have on my list is Hutchinson, and I have him going in the 50 to 60 range, which I
Okay.
feel like is lower than what he deserves, but being a realist, I guess, I think that's where we're going to see him.
Yeah. I have Hutch way up at 40. Yeah. I love Hutch, and I think he's got a lot of respect around the league. So I think he's going to be right. He's going to be way higher than 88 that he was last year. So it'll be good. So who's the next person on your list?
Next one I have is Amon-Ra, and I have him going in the 20 to 30 range.
All right. I got Amon-Ra at 35.
Okay.
I think he gets a little disrespect just because people view him as a slot receiver. People like outside receivers a little more flashy. Amon-Ra can play out there, and I think half the time he has played out there, but I think people mostly see him as a slot receiver. But man, like we've talked before, he's everything you want in a player. So, he may be 35 on this list, but I can't imagine any other wide receiver I want to start my team other than him.
Definitely. I don't understand that hate either. Like you said, the whole slot thing. I don't care where you're lining up. You're catching the ball. You're finding the hole. You're getting in the end zone. That's not our fault if they're not going to put their top corner over Amon-Ra and you just shadow him around.
Well, I mean, he's getting first downs. When we needed a first down in our playoff game with the Rams, who they went with. Everybody in the stadium knew that they were going to go to Amon-Ra, and he was still there. So, I mean, he just has that kind of rapport with Jared Goff. And, again, I love Amon-Ra. He's special. All right.
Glad he's a Lion.
Yes, love it. We, he may have been disappointed seeing the 313 on his phone when the Lions drafted him, but it's kind of worked out for everybody. I could say he helped change the culture. He did.
Now the draft picks are happy to see the 313.
Yeah, they're very. Yeah, you could just tell the way they talk and the things. They're like, oh yes, solid team. So
right.
All right, and I think there's some cachet about being drafted by the Lions. The Lions draft football players, guys that love football, and just to say, okay, these guys believe in me. They know that I love football is probably also a good feeling for them, I'd imagine. All right, so by my accounts, we have one guy left on this list for the Lions. Correct? You got one guy left?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mentioned him before, but yes.
Yeah, it's Panay. So where do you have Panay? You got him in the top 10?
I have Panay just outside. I think he's going between 10 and 20.
Yep, I got 15, so we're right in the same range.
Yeah.
Again, Jacob and I do not, we didn't say any of the players or the numbers ahead of time, so it's pretty good. We're right there. I like the way we do this so that we can kind of it's our checks and balance system on this. So, but yeah, everybody gets to discover where we put players when we do. So, but yeah, top player, super happy again, along with Amon-Ra, pillar of the team. What else can you say? He's a football player, and I love him on our team.
100%.
Yeah,
great draft pick.
Yeah.
Shouts out to Panay. He just got married.
Yeah,
I don't know what's going on with the Lions and weddings, but I think we've had like 5 players get married over this offseason.
I know. They're all getting rings, wedding rings, but it's time for us to get Super Bowl rings.
Yeah, right.
Next year, they're going to get their second ring of the year. So, yeah, well, it's kind of crazy. You sign those big contracts and, yep.
Right.
Sign that marriage contract too. So it's awesome. Another exercise that Jacob and I want to do, we're going to talk about the top 10 players from 2023 that was on the NFL list. And then we're going to guess which players that were in that top 10 are no longer going to be in that top 10. And then we're going to go after that. We're going to talk about our top 5 NFL players. I'm going to go through the top 10 and then Jacob, I'll let you go. We'll just kind of go back and forth to who we think is going to be off the top list here. So number 1 was Patrick Mahomes last year. Number 2, Justin Jefferson. Number 3, Jalen Hurts. Number 4, Nick Bosa. Number 5, Travis Kelce. Number 6, Joe Burrow. Number 7, Tyreek Hill. 8, Josh Allen. Number 9, Micah Parsons. And number 10, Chris Jones. How many players do you have that are not going to be on that list next year?
So I think you could make a case that as many as maybe 4 of these guys might not make the top 10 next year.
I have 4 that will not make it next year. So
Okay.
so
Some
my
of them are
first
a dice roll, but I mean, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. My first one that I for sure will not be in this top 10 is that was number 3 at Jalen Hurts. He will not be in the top 10 just based
Agreed.
on last year's performance. Last year to get on this list, he was coming off the Super Bowl year and he played lights out. So, I mean, and he played really good, but last year was not his best year. I mean, there could be a lot of the reasons, could be injury or whatever. He's not going to be on that top 10 list this coming up year. You agree? It sounds like.
Yeah, I actually, I had him and one other person with the biggest drop off because I think he should fall out of the top 20, probably even further than that.
You talking about Hurts?
Yeah, the other person that I dropping out pretty far is Joe Burrow, and that's also because of the injury. Maybe I know he tried to play through the first injury and everything, and that's probably why his numbers weren't very good when he did play. But he didn't have a great year last year, and most of the time with these lists, it's really about what you did last year versus what we think you're going to do. So I think Burrow's dropping out of the top 10. I don't think he'll drop as far as Hurts, but I mean, like I said, the injury, I don't know how much they're going in that. I feel like they both could drop significantly.
I think so too. I think, definitely Jalen Hurts more than Joe Burrow. Jalen Hurts, if he was injured, just played through it. And so that doesn't look as good as Joe Burrow just being out because you're playing that game of what if. However, the Bengals played pretty well even without Joe Burrow. I mean, for that division, it's fairly tough division. You look at that and you're like, maybe Joe isn't, as dynamite as we thought he was, but I like Joe Burrow, but he has also he's been having some injury things. So that you got to think about that, and they're, Bengals struggle to protect him and then that leads to the injuries. So that's one thing that's nice about, us with the offensive line. Jared Goff stays upright for the most part, reduces injury risk. So, all right. So those are your 2 big ones. Another one that I think that's probably going to drop off is Travis Kelce. Didn't have a strong, he didn't have as strong a year last year, and I just don't see him being in top 10.
Taylor Swift.
Huh?
He's dating Taylor Swift. How are you
he may had like a top year for himself. I mean, it sounds like it personally, but as far as on the football field, he's definitely not. Right. I don't think that he's viewed in that top 10 range right now. That's my opinion. He had some drops last year too that were just uncharacteristic of him. And he's just getting older too. So I don't think that Travis Kelce makes that top 10 list. What's your next on there?
Yeah, just he had the injury thing happen, and then it just felt like when he was out there, because the Chiefs didn't really have too many other receiving threats, they definitely paid a lot more attention to him than they usually do. They had a linebacker, safety over top watching him the whole time. He was getting frustrated. Like you said, the drop started happening too when he had the spots. You're right. He really did not have a great year at all.
Yep. No, he won the Super Bowl, so I guess that's good.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter on a personal level as long as the team wins.
Yeah, yep, for sure.
Those 3, I had one more person, and this one, I think, if he's not top 10, he's probably still going to be pretty close, but I had Nick Bosa. Don't think he had as great of a year as he did previously. He's still a great player. Still a top defensive end, so I don't know. I think he'd probably be, if he drops, he's going to be pretty close to 10 still.
Yeah, I think he still makes the top 10. My other player that I had listed is Josh Allen dropping out. So he was rated 8 last year. I don't think he did. I don't think he would be raised on that list. So I have, 3 quarterbacks falling out of that top 10 list. So typically those are
quarterbacks get so much love. I mean,
I know
Josh Allen was still rated number 1 on Pro Football Focus last year. We already talked about him before. He gets a lot of love. He's highly rated all the time. I guess, for the players too, I don't think he's going to drop out of the top 10.
Losing Diggs and everything like that, they might, hold that against him. So that's my personal opinion is Josh Allen's going to fall out. I think Nick Bosa stays in there, but I don't think he's not going to come in at number 4 again. He'll be probably slip a little bit. But I definitely wouldn't be surprised if Josh Allen falls out. But I agree with you. Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow are the two quarterbacks I think fall out of the top 10.
Right. Those are the two glaring ones for me.
Let's talk about our top five players. Let's just start at number 5. Who do you got number 5?
Number 5, I have Tyreek Hill.
All right, number 5, I have CMC, Christian
Okay.
McCaffrey. Number 4, who do you got?
I've got CMC at number 4.
Okay, I got Myles Garrett at number 4.
Okay. I can see how this is going to go. At number 3, I have Myles Garrett.
Number 3, I have Lamar. I think Lamar moves up just because MVP season. I think he's going to be up there.
Yeah, when I was making this, I put Lamar at number 6. I had him on the fringe, just outside.
Yep. All right, number 2, who you got?
Number 2, I've got Patrick Mahomes.
All right, I got Justin Jefferson at number 2. Same. I don't think that he drops off that list. He did nothing last year other than to get injured to drop from number 2, in my opinion. He signed that big contract too, so people are going to be eyeing him for that. And who you got number 1 then?
I've got Jets at number 1.
Number 1. I still got Patrick Mahomes at number 1. He won the Super Bowl,
That's
quarterback
fair,
of a
right.
Super Bowl team. He's not going to drop out of there. The only reason he drops out of there is that people have too high of expectations for Patrick Mahomes.
Right. He's been doing it so long, it's old news.
Yeah, and that's what he's going to fall into. It's a Tom Brady thing. Where it's just like at some point you just get immune to the greatness and you just kind of expect it, and then you just look for faults. You look for that player to drop a little bit. But as long as he's winning Super Bowls, it's going to be hard to take him off number 1 on that list. But when quarterback of the Super Bowl team, going to be number 1.
For Justin Jefferson to do what he did with the quarterback room that he had, and, that revolving door of all the different quarterbacks that were playing and they didn't have time to game plan. And, for him to be able to still, put up the season, put up the numbers and everything that he did, he was hurt too. That's why I put him number 1.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it helps when you're facing Cam Sutton 2 out of 3 weeks. That'll pad your numbers. But no,
Yeah.
Jets deserves to be up there. I mean, I don't see an argument with that. He's the highest paid non-quarterback in the league for a reason. He's a game changer, and at the wide receiver position, you're so susceptible to, like you said, quarterback play. And even when they were throwing out their rookies or Josh Dobbs, he's still, Jets is still doing his thing, and he's just an amazing wide receiver. So, speaking of Jets, we get to see him on the wide receiver show. It's kind of nice to see him, that kind of side of him. But our thoughts are going to be with another wide receiver that's on that show, and that's our boy Amon-Ra. So, what episode are you up to right now?
I only watched the first one so far.
You only watched
but that was the one I think Amon-Ra was pretty heavily featured in that
He's
one.
heavily featured in there. So I'm going to pause for a second. We're not going to go into depth. I don't think there's too much spoiler information, but if you kind of want to go into that show blind, you could skip to the Honolulu Blitz. That's our next section. I'll have it chapter marked down below. So if you want to do that, I'd say, skip ahead right now. But however, we're going to talk a little bit about the show. I'm up to episode 4. Jake, won't speak past episode 1 because that's where Jacob's at. My boy loves the show too much for us to not go ahead and watch it. And actually, my wife is like super digging it too. So I'm kind of in a happy dad mode. I get to watch the show with my family and getting our football fix in this dry period, before training camp hits. So, what were your thoughts on episode 1?
I love the show. I love the quarterback show. So, I mean, I was excited that Amon-Ra is going to be on there. Really cool to see it in depth. They showed some stuff with his dad, which we saw on Hard Knocks, like the same kind of interview, the same kind of setup and stuff like that. But it's still cool just to see, behind the scenes stuff, especially with it being a Detroit Lion. You see the stuff about the injury that he went through and, just how bad it was when, we don't really get that insight during the season. We don't know to what extent he's hurt like that. So, I mean, that was all very cool.
They did the Amon-Ra thing right at the beginning. They introduced him, and it's like, I know all the receivers that are rated ahead of him, this disrespect, the fact that he didn't want to go to Detroit, like all these tropes that we've kind of, we've all heard, from being from Detroit, but people that outside of Detroit may, that may not know that about Amon-Ra. So I was glad they got that stuff out of the way right away. because it's just like the whole Matthew Stafford went to high school with Clayton Kershaw. You just get tired of that same fact being thrown out over and over again. But is it possible that Amon-Ra is even tougher than we thought? Like,
it looks that way, doesn't it?
Unbelievable. So wait till you get a little bit later. You're going to find out some other things. Is he going to get on the Detroit sports Mount Rushmore of toughness? Do you think Amon-Ra, he's making his way up there? I mean,
he's well on his way there, isn't he?
It's unbelievable. And I think just the amount of respect that we're all gaining for him is impressive. He just blew me away with playing a torn oblique off the bone. Like, unbelievable.
Right. Sidelines other people for a really long time, and he's playing with it. You know, it's cool for him. We already know a certain level of inside information, and we know the story about, we know that he keeps that notebook with the receivers drafted before him. But like you said, there's a lot of people that don't know that about him. There's a lot of people, NFL fans, that are just watching the show, and maybe they'll be Amon-Ra fans now. Maybe he'll get a little more respect and be thought of more highly than he was before this show came out, because he deserves it. Definitely. He, like we talked about with these rankings and everything, doesn't get a whole lot of love when he needs to. So that's cool, that the show's out there painting him in a positive light, just showing the real side of Amon-Ra. My biggest thing is that I know what's coming. I know they're going to show the game against the 49ers. They're going to give us the inside scoop, the behind the scenes. We got to relive that again. You already made me talk about it on the pod.
Yeah. Hey, I'm dreading the ending of the year just because of that. And there's 249. What makes it even worse is that there's 249er, George Kittle, tight end, Deebo Samuel, wide receivers on there. So they're going to show the elation on the other side of it too. So that's going to make it even worse, because not only are we going to see the despair on Amon-Ra on the Lions sideline, we're going to have to look at it through, the other side too. And I'm not looking forward to that. So, all right, we're going to get into our next segment, and it is our favorite segment. At least it is mine. The Honolulu Blitz.
It's time for the Honolulu Blitz.
I'm going to ask Jacob, so we're going to get through our 5 questions here. The first one is, what rank were the Lions last year in rushing yards in the NFL?
6.
Number 5. So close. Very good. Yep. Surprisingly, the Bears are number 2. So I was really surprised by that, but then I remembered who their quarterback was last year, and I realized exactly why they were.
Those are inflated numbers.
Those are, yes. He had to play the Lions defense twice, so he got, he got his yards. And last year, in what game did Amon-Ra have his most receptions?
Denver.
Incorrect. It was the Ravens, and you care to guess how many catches he had in that game?
14.
13. Close. All right, that was a bonus question. All right. Who had the fastest recorded speed in a game last year?
It was a Dolphin, wasn't it?
It was not a Dolphin.
It was not a Dolphin.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I would have went.
I know. That's where I figured you would go.
Right.
It's not Tyreek. So that was.
I was thinking Tyreek, a Chan, one of those guys. Mm-hmm. Okay, not a Dolphin. Was it Ja?
No, it is DK Metcalf, actually at 22.23 miles per hour.
That was the slant against the Cowboys, was it not?
Yes, it was. Yeah. 71 yards.
Man, it felt like he was going that fast.
I played this game with my son before when I went over the questions, and that's his exact. He goes, "Who was that play against the Cowboys, wasn't it?" And I go, "Yep, it was."
Yeah.
All right. So this one is not a trivia question, but if you could have a beer with any current Lions player, who would you want to drink that beer with?
Frank Ragnow.
Frank. All right. Cool. All right. So the Eminem album dropped last week. I know you've listened to it all. Outside of Houdini and Toby, the 2 songs that were released at a time, do you have a favorite song on that album yet?
I like the song Evil. That's one of the ones that gets stuck in my head.
Yep.
Good chorus.
Mine is Fuel. I love that song.
That's a good song too. Guilty Conscience Part 2. That's
sweet. So it's a pretty interesting album. I do like it. It's pretty heavy at some points, I think. But that fuel one is with JID, and JID rips it up at the beginning, and then Eminem has one of my favorite verses of all time on there. It's unreal, and then he takes some huge shots at P. Diddy. You got to listen to the lyrics on there if you haven't.
Right.
So, all right.
No, it's great.
All right, man. I'm up. Hit me up.
All right, here we go. If the top 100 list existed back in the 90s, how high would Barry Sanders have made it?
He would have been number one on a few, like for the whole 90s or just like individual years?
No, individual. So like, if you're just saying, you can pick just in general, how high would he have made it? There's only been one running back ever to be number one.
But running backs were looked different in the 90s than they are now. So quarterbacks weren't as like celebrated back then. I mean, certainly celebrated and mentioned, but it wasn't. The running back was the thing in the 90s, in the 80s, and so everything in fantasy football was running back related. Everything. So Barry would have definitely been number one on that list, especially if the players would have voted, because he could do things on the field that no other player could do, and I think the players would have respected that.
So not only are you going number one, you think he's number one multiple years.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he
had the MVP season, so I mean, so you had a running back MVP in there during that time. It just speaks to what I was saying, that, running backs were just looked at different during that time. I know you weren't really, watching football as much during that time, but it was just a different feeling, and they hadn't changed the passing rules at those times. So there was just a lot, more hindrances on the quarterbacks, as far as wide receivers getting open and everything like that. I mean, the line, to get 100 receptions in a year in the 90s was a really big deal. And now it's just commonplace for, multiple receivers to get 100 receptions. Right.
All right.
All right. Number 2, what Lions defensive end was the only Lion to make the top 100 list in 2016? Wasn't sure if you've been researching the top 100s, if you would know.
I had. I looked back. I went back about 5 years, so I didn't go back to 2016. Let's see. Was that Ziggy's year? Or was
it was.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say Ziggy. I would say Cliff Averill was around that time too.
Yep. Ezekiel Ansah, he was number 43.
What he had 14? How many? He had 14 sacks one year or something like that.
I don't have the number, but it was the year before that. He did really well. They put him up high on that top 100 list.
Right, and then he was injured every season after that. So flash in the pan, but it was a dominant season. It was exciting.
Definitely a little bit of a forgotten Lion now.
Yep.
Of the projected 32 starting quarterbacks for this season, how many were drafted number one overall? Don't try to go through every team in your head.
I'm trying to. Yeah, it's just I'm gonna guess 6.
Oh, close. So there were 8.
8. Okay.
Next ones are not right and wrong. They're more opinion questions.
Cool.
If Calvin Johnson waited one more year and retired after the 2016 season, how far do we make it that year? We made it to the playoffs, but we lost our playoff game.
Was that the Seattle year? What year was that?
Yes, I believe that was Seattle.
Okay. This is going to be a controversial take, but I really feel like Matthew Stafford changed on an offensive player, because it seems like he relied on Calvin too much and tried to push the ball to him, and why not? I mean, Calvin Johnson was unreal. So I don't know if we get any further, to be honest with you, but I'm not saying that this is not to discredit Calvin at all, but I just think that Matthew Stafford was, a better quarterback in the sense that he spread the ball around a lot better and didn't feel like the pressure to get it to Calvin. That being said, I wish Calvin was, played a few more years on our team.
Right.
I'd take him on our team right now. So,
yeah. Good answer. Another really good take. Look at you,
man.
All right. Last question. Who will have the number 1 overall pick next year? What team?
Is it Carolina? No, Carolina is mine up there. I feel so bad for Bryce Young, because he's in a terrible situation. He has no talent around him, and so he's going to be judged as the number 1 quarterback, and he just has nothing around him. CJ Stroud, number 2, came in, and he's at least got Nico, and he had Tank Dell and he's got some other wide receivers that just, played, better. Just, I feel really bad, but I can't see anyone being worse than Carolina. And they traded Burns, right? So he didn't just leave the team. Yeah. So they got rid of their best defensive player too. So, I mean, I can't imagine them being it's just like they gave up so much to draft Bryce. And then, they were so talent deficient to begin with. And then, it's just not a good situation. It's kind of like what happened. Justin Fields came in with the Bears. It's just like you draft this quarterback, but you have no one around him to play well. And it seems like, if you do it the other way where you get talent and then you bring in the quarterback, you're setting them up for success. But yeah, Carolina is, I think, an easy pick. Is that where you got any other choices, or is that where you were thinking?
There's a couple like perennial like people. You got like the Raiders. People don't know about the Patriots. The Panthers, obviously.
Yep.
There's some toss-ups down there.
Yeah, Patriots are another one of those. It just depends on how that rookie quarterback plays over there, Drake May. But I don't know. In Arizona, always, I have no belief in Kyler Murray. He's not one guy that I think is, I wouldn't pay him the money to be my starting quarterback. I don't think he's all in for team play. And frankly, Marvin Harrison seems very distracted by the outside football stuff. So it's not a good thing when they're already, thinking about contracts and all this stuff that's off the field. It just shows their focus. In my opinion, it just shows their focus is somewhere else. So I don't have faith in Arizona either. But
yeah, agreed.
And our boy Jim Harbaugh in San Diego, that's a tough, you're going to
He's not in San Diego, Jason.
I mean, yeah, shoot. Yeah, good. I'll leave that in because it just shows my age, but in Los Angeles. So I love Jim Harbaugh, but I don't think that this year is going to be the year he's going to be able to transform what he wants, a vision of what he wants a team to be. So.
Right. I think you got to give him at least a few years. But I mean, he's got Justin Herbert,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got a good building block.
See, but
Yeah, in my opinion, he's going to want to do what he did in Michigan. Is you build the offensive line up, you dominate there, and you dominate the back. You want to rush, you want to impose your will, and then you got Justin Herbert. So, but they've gotten rid of their best.
Yeah, right.
They got rid of.
Do you think the Chargers have a top 5 pick next year?
Yeah, I think that they're definitely in the talks now. Jim Harbaugh is a wild card because he could do better, but you're playing Patrick Mahomes twice a year. You do get the Raiders twice a year, so
and the Broncos. The Broncos, we don't know.
Bo Nix is the answer. So man,
okay, well,
no,
mark that down if you think so.
No, I do not think so. I was being sarcastic. So, all right, man. I think we can wrap it up here. It was fun going through this list and going through all this stuff. So I had a good time. Hope everybody listening had a good time. We will see you next week. Go Lions.